Welcome to Sunshine Art and Drawing. Today I am doing an Easter card that you can make for your friends and family for this Easter. You're going to need some scrap cardboard, some card shapes, and some coloured paper, as well as these little sticky foam squares. I got these from just a discount store for a couple of dollars. And here I've got the pieces of card that you're going to need. So take the scrap piece of card and measure out how big your card's going to be, just so that you don't make your template too large. I measured out my card and it was 13 centimeters by 19 centimeters, but you can make it any size that you want. And I'm just showing you here. Once you've cut out your template, you need two pieces of cardboard. Don't need to be the same color, they can be any color, doesn't matter. And I've drawn my template on the first piece, and I'm going to just decide on my colored paper. So just take out all your pieces of colored paper. You can cut them any way you want. I just found it a bit easier to cut them all first, just so you can kind of decide what you want your colors to look like and how you want to lay them, whether you want to go sort of different angles, which can look really pretty, or whether you want to do them very, very close together or quite spaced apart. And I was just spending some time kind of layering them all up in different sort of order because I wanted to make sure they're a bit random so I didn't end up with any that were very similar close together. And I'll also show you how to touch it up a bit if you've kind of like left some spaces after sticking them down. So here I'm just showing you the colors that I've chosen and in the order that I want to put them. So you can kind of just do that and pop that to the side. Once you've got a pair of scissors, do a little cut just to get yourself started and then cut a sort of an outline. What you're trying to do is to remove the piece of card that you've used as a template to leave a border so that when you do your layered paper, the border will kind of keep the edges down and keep it smooth. Now I'm doing two smaller eggs. I kind of wanted them to look a little bit like a heart as well. So that's why I've got this kind of heart shape with two eggs. Once you've gotten that done and you just smooth it out, any spots that are a bit rumpled, that's okay. It'll turn out fine. And I was trying to decide what I wanted to do for my design, whether I wanted to work from the top down or from the bottom up. But I thought I would lay out all the paper just to make it easy, and these are the colors I kind of wanted to do. And you can kind of put them in and out and move them around before you stick them down. And I did this a couple of times off camera, I recommend to stick them to the back of the card like I'm doing here. So you might see me struggle with these little strips a little bit. Sometimes the paper doesn't want to come off, but eventually it will. But I found if you stick it across the back like this, you get a much smoother result on the front. If you stick it to another sheet and then try to stick the border down on top of it, it becomes a lot more rumpled. And I'm also making sure when I use the little stickers to stick down, I stick them partially on the sheet of color and partially on the piece of cardboard. It helps hold down the next piece a little bit too. So if you can do that, it always works well. I fight with these little stickers quite a lot. But another thing as well is when I was doing this, I thought it would work as well with a glue stick or any other kind of glue that you've got will work fine. I just happen to have these little sticky foam squares and I thought that might work better, but I think a glue stick would work just as well. Like you can use little pieces of tape and it would work the same as well. So whatever you've got on hand will work, and any kind of paper. The paper I'm using at the moment is just some thin paper that's for origami. You could just even use like crepe paper or wrapping paper that you've got left over from Christmas. You could do that into little different sort of designs. But once you've sort of stuck all of your pieces down and you've got like, I would call this kind of like a background layer of colours, make sure it still folds and smooth it out a bit and add any sort of stickers that you might want to neaten it up. And this is the inside part. So this is how it will look once you've trimmed it all off. The inside will cover that, so you won't see that sort of back area. And the way that you do that is you just put a few in the corners. Just the first two. You want to leave the second part because you want it to be a bit flexible, so when you open and close the card it doesn't try and rip off all your sheets of paper. And then I put some more dots just here on this edge to help stick it to the back. And you can just trim off any excess, neaten it up a bit, make it look all sort of professional. I think this came with like a sheet of like 100 squares, so you can use as many as you need. And that kind of background layer, I thought it looks nice, but I'd like it to be a bit more sort of detailed. So I kind of just measured across the back of how long they would need to be and sort of slotted the extra sheets of paper in place. So I cut a few extra colours and just sort of slotted them in place. And you just sort of wiggle it around and you can get it into the right spot. I wanted to have a layer that looked a bit like a sunrise, so I was adding some orange and yellow colours here and there just to sort of add a bit more of that. And then you can just add a little sticky piece underneath it and then position it in place, and you've got it where you want it, and trim off any excess. And this is how you can touch it up and make it look a bit more sort of personalized. So I wanted to add a bit of pink in that little space there, and I sort of tried it out there and went, maybe behind the yellow, make the yellow stand out a bit more with a light color behind it. And that ended up where I wanted it there. And I thought, maybe some green, add a bit more color there. And as you can see, you can kind of adjust them a little bit. Once you've got them in the spots you want to, you can just add a little bit more of a sticky piece and it will stay. And I wanted to add a little bit of a sun. So at first I thought I would add it at the bottom, but then I thought that looked a bit strange. So I just made it in a much more semicircle and picked the spot where I already had some other colours. I just wanted to add some sticky pieces there just to hold them in place because they kept wriggling. So I figured I'd put it where it is like the yellow was already there, to add almost like that is the yellow sunshine. So I just add a bit of stickiness to it just to get it in the right spot. And tuck it underneath this little corner, there we go. And that's just to make it look a bit like a sun. And the pink area is still moving, so I'm going to add a bit of stickiness to the pink area on the back to get it in the right spot, so that the sun sits in the right spot too. Once you've got all of your paper how you like it, you probably want to smooth it down a bit with your fingertips just to make sure all the sticky spots are sticking correctly. And now I wanted to add a bit of a fringe to the bottom just to show like the little egg shapes are sitting on some grass. So if you take a piece of paper like I have and just do little tiny snips all the way along, you'll end up with it looking like a sweet little fringe. Give it a little ruffle so that they're a bit more interesting. And then I just stuck it in place with a few more little sticky pieces. I found if you stretch the paper a little bit before I stuck it down, it made the fringe sort of stick up a little bit more. So I think it added a little bit to it just so it kind of sits up a little bit, looks like grass. I was thinking about doing another layer, but I thought I'll just sort of adjust them a little bit, and I think that looks pretty cute. I just added a little bit more sticky in the middle because it was sort of sitting up a bit. And I'm just going to add the little Happy Easter kind of title to the card. So I always recommend sort of map out what you're going to do first. So I just did this in very lightly in lead pencil, what I wanted to write, so that when I went back with the pen, I know exactly what I'm going to write. I don't have to worry about spelling or anything like that. And you can just slowly do each letter, making sure they look very uniform. And that's how you should write sort of any sort of sign writing or posters. Map out what you want to say first and then draw it out. It's always a good tip. I sort of leant on the little fringe a little bit as I was writing. Now I thought it looked okay, but I wanted it to be thicker, so I got a brush pen. It's just a thick black brush pen. It's also waterproof, so if this gets wet, the ink will stay. So I want to wish you a happy Easter for you and your friends and your family. Thanks so much for watching. Have a sunshiny day.